The cold metal of the prison bench fit into Elena Rodriguez's spine, a sensation almost welcome compared to the memories that constantly clawed at the edges of her consciousness. 17 months of confinement had stripped away everything but her core, a determination that burned brighter than the surveillance drones hovering just beyond the reinforced graphene walls. Her latest disciplinary hearing had been a masterpiece of military bureaucracy. 3 admirals, their pressed uniforms a stark contrast to her rumpled prison attire, had dissected her final mission with surgical precision. The holographic displays had flickered with the ghosts of her past, a damaged carrier, a disabled support fleet, and the impossible choice she'd made to save 3,000 lives at the cost of violating direct operational protocols. "You intentionally sacrificed a strategic asset," Admiral Hargrove had stated, his voice a razor-edged whisper that cut through the sterile hearing room. The quantum communication relay was worth more than the lives of those colonists. Elena remembered her response. Not a plea, not an apology, but a simple statement of fact. The relay can be rebuilt. Those people cannot. The prison's ambient lighting shifted, mimicking the perpetual twilight of deep space colonies. Elena's fingers traced a series of scars on her left forearm, each one a reminder of missions survived, of battles that had carved her into the weapon she'd become. They were more than marks of injury. They were a topographical map of her survival. A vibration in the room's communication node broke her reverie. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing Lieutenant Marcus Rice, a young officer whose combination of technical brilliance and political connections made him both an asset and a potential threat. "Captain Rodriguez," he began, the formality of his address a thin veneer over something more complex. "The United Earth Command has a proposition that might interest you." Elena didn't move. She'd heard propositions before, desperate attempts to reclaim her tactical expertise without fully acknowledging her previous sacrifices. The military had a long memory for infractions, but an even longer memory for utility. Rice continued, his projection casting sharp shadows across the cell. "We've received intelligence about a new Zorn offensive. Standard fleet responses have proven ineffective. We need someone who understands asymmetrical warfare, someone who's willing to break every rule to achieve the impossible." A subtle mechanism in the cell wall retracted, revealing a series of technical schematics. Not just any documents. These were classified designs that would have triggered security protocols in any other context. The holographic blueprints revealed something extraordinary, a battleship that defied every conventional understanding of space combat. The UESS Defiance was more than a ship. It was a technological fever dream born from humanity's most desperate moments of innovation. Quantum entanglement drive systems intertwined with adaptive nanostructural frameworks. Weapon systems that seemed to dance between theoretical physics and pure imagination. "You're offering me a suicide mission," Elena observed, her voice devoid of emotion. Rice didn't flinch. "I'm offering you a chance to rewrite the rules of engagement. The Zorn believe they've categorized humanity, mapped our capabilities, understood our limitations." A rare smile crossed his face. "They're wrong." The schematics began to rotate, revealing intricate details that would make most military strategists weep with both terror and excitement. This wasn't just a ship. It was a statement, a technological middle finger to an alien collective that had spent millennia believing in their own superiority. "The crew is being assembled," Rice continued. "Specialists, outcasts, those who understand that conventional warfare is a relic of a time when humans thought small." He paused, letting the weight of the statement sink in. "You'll have complete operational autonomy. No restrictions, no political oversight." Elena understood the subtext. This was more than a mission. This was a final chance. For her, for the ship, for humanity itself. An opportunity to transform from a species viewed as a footnote in galactic history to something far more significant. Her fingers brushed against the ship's technical readouts. Every line, every calculation spoke of desperate innovation, of a species that learned fastest when its back was against the wall. When do we start? The United Earth diplomatic nexus stood as a testament to humanity's resilience, a gleaming structure of carbon nanocomposite and smart glass, built on the ruins of New Geneva after the first Zorn invasion. Inside the central chamber, holographic displays tracked the movements of alien delegations with surgical precision. Dr. Amara O'Keefe, Earth's chief xenopolitical strategist, studied the incoming Zorn transmission with a mathematician's calm. Her team had spent decades decoding the complex linguistic and biological communication patterns of the Zorn collective. What most saw as incomprehensible crystalline communication, she understood as an intricate language of quantum resonances and molecular vibrations. They're not just delivering an ultimatum, she muttered to her lead linguist, Dr. James Chen. They're performing a cultural ritual of subjugation. The Zorn diplomatic vessel materialized in Earth's orbital zone, a fractal construct of living crystal and quantum-locked matter that defied traditional understanding of spacecraft design. Its very presence warped the surrounding spacetime, a silent demonstration of technological superiority that had crushed hundreds of civilizations before humanity. Commander Krulax materialized in the diplomatic chamber, a being of impossible geometry. Unlike humanoid species that relied on bilateral symmetry, the Zorn existed as constantly shifting crystal matrices that could rearrange their molecular structure at will. Each movement was a complex mathematical equation, each communication a multidimensional dialogue that most species couldn't even perceive. Humanity's continued existence is in computational error, Krulax began, its voice a series of resonant frequencies that would have been painful to human ears if not for advanced translation technology. Your species represents a marginal statistical anomaly in galactic development. Your technological progression is chaotic, unpredictable, dangerous. The holographic displays behind the Zorn commander flickered with devastating imagery. Human colony worlds reduced to radioactive slag, entire settlement clusters transformed into cosmic dust. Each image was a precise documentation of Zorn military efficiency, a cold catalog of destruction that spoke of millennia of systematic conquest. In the observation room, Elena Rodriguez watched with a predator's intensity. She understood something the Zorn did not, that humanity's greatest strength was never in its initial technological capabilities, but in its ability to adapt with savage creativity. Dr. O'Keefe's translation team worked frantically, parsing the complex linguistic nodes of the Zorn communication. What emerged was more than a simple ultimatum. It was a comprehensive analysis of human potential, a clinical deconstruction that viewed humanity as nothing more than a potential resource to be optimized or eliminated. Your species demonstrates persistent inefficiency, Krulax continued. Emotional decision-making, genetic diversity that introduces unnecessary complexity. Mathematical models predict your civilization has a 0.03% chance of long-term survival. The chamber remained silent. No human representative interrupted. No diplomatic protocols were observed. The Zorn took this as a sign of submission. They were wrong. Elena stepped forward, her movements deliberate. She carried no weapons, no technological augmentations, just a military uniform that spoke of countless battles and a gaze that could cut through quantum shielding. "We accept your assessment," she said, her voice translating through systems that converted human speech into the Zorn's complex quantum resonances. "And we propose a challenge." Krulax's crystalline structure momentarily fractured, a microscopic response that would have been invisible to any other species. But Dr. O'Keefe saw it. A moment of genuine surprise. "A single engagement," Elena continued. "One ship, one battle. Winner determines the fate of our species." The diplomatic chamber transformed. Holographic projections began calculating potential outcomes, quantum computers running billions of scenarios per microsecond. The Zorn delegation saw only what they expected to see, a desperate gambit by an inferior species. They didn't see the predatory smile forming at the edge of Elena Rodriguez's lips. Krulax's response was immediate and dismissive. "Accepted. Your extinction is now a mathematical certainty." As the transmission ended, Dr. O'Keefe turned to Elena. "Do you realize what you've just done?" Elena's eyes never left the holographic display of the Zorn vessel. Exactly what was necessary. The Black Site Omega Research Facility wasn't on any official map. Buried 3 kilometers beneath the Atacama Desert, it represented the absolute bleeding edge of human technological innovation, a place where the laws of physics were not just studied, but systematically dismantled and reconstructed. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's mother, Dr. Maria Rodriguez, had once called this place her cathedral of possibilities. Now her legacy lived on through the most radical piece of technology humanity had ever conceived. Kai Chen stood before the UESS Defiance, his hands trembling slightly. As the lead quantum systems architect, he understood the ship better than anyone alive, perhaps better than the ship understood itself. The vessel wasn't just a technological marvel. It was a living testament to human desperation and ingenuity. The quantum entanglement drive at the ship's core was Maria Rodriguez's final gift to humanity. Developed in the darkest days of the first Zorn invasion, it represented a fundamental reimagining of space travel. Traditional propulsion relied on pushing against something: chemical rockets, ion drives, plasma acceleration. The Rodriguez drive did something entirely different. It didn't move through space. It moved space itself. "The AI is almost fully integrated," Kai muttered to Dr. Aisha Okoye, the neural interface specialist. Her cybernetic implants glinted under the facility's soft blue lighting, a testament to humanity's own biological technological fusion. Araya, the Advanced Responsive Intelligence Algorithm, was more than a standard chip's computer. Constructed from a unique neural matrix that combined quantum computing with neural networks derived from multiple human donors, Araya represented a new form of intelligence. Not quite human, not quite machine, but something revolutionary. The ship's hull was a marvel of adaptive nanotechnology. Developed by researchers who had lost everything to the Zorn, each molecular layer could reconfigure itself milliseconds faster than any known threat could penetrate. Traditional energy shields were static defenses. The Defiance's hull was a living, breathing defensive system that learned and adapted in real time. Primary quantum entanglement matrix is showing 99.7% stability, Aisha reported, her augmented vision scanning multiple holographic interfaces simultaneously. Neural donor compatibility is within acceptable parameters. Kai knew the truth behind those clinical words. The neural donors weren't volunteers. They were survivors, people who had lost everything in the Zorn invasions. Their memories, their trauma, their survival instincts were literally woven into the ship's consciousness. A holographic projection materialized in the center of the facility. Elena Rodriguez's file, a comprehensive psychological profile that read like a war diary. Tactical brilliance, unconventional thinking, a complete disregard for standard operational procedures when lives were at stake. "She's perfect," Araya's voice emerged, not as a mechanical sound, but as a complex harmony of multiple human vocal patterns, statistically improbable, emotionally volatile, tactically unpredictable. Dr. Okoye raised an eyebrow. "Is that an assessment or an admiration?" The AI's response was instantaneous. Difference is statistically irrelevant at this point of technological development. The ship's weapon systems were equally revolutionary. Standard military doctrine relied on overwhelming firepower. The Defiance's arsenal was about precision, adaptability, and psychological warfare. Quantum-locked missiles that could alter their quantum state mid-flight. Energy disruption systems that could neutralize entire fleet communication networks. Adaptive camouflage that could make the ship functionally invisible across multiple electromagnetic spectrums. Kai pulled up the final system diagnostics. Each subsystem was a testament to human innovation, born from pure survival instinct. The power generation system could draw energy from quantum vacuum fluctuations. The life support systems could recycle and regenerate resources with near-perfect efficiency. "We're ready," he whispered, more to himself than anyone else. Araya's response came simultaneously across every communication channel in the facility. Ready is a human concept. We are beyond readiness. We are inevitable. Outside the facility, the Atacama Desert stretched endlessly, a barren landscape that mirrored the cold, vast emptiness of space. Humanity's final hope sat quietly, waiting to be unleashed. The final hours before deployment were a symphony of controlled chaos. Marcus Rodriguez, Alina's younger brother and the Defiance's communication specialist, worked through a series of encrypted quantum channels that most intelligence agencies would have considered impossible. His workspace was a controlled maelstrom of holographic displays, each one representing a different layer of communication infrastructure they were about to leverage. "We're not just preparing for a battle," Marcus muttered to Aisha Okoye, who was calibrating the ship's neural interfaces. "We're preparing a comprehensive information warfare strategy that will redefine how intelligent species communicate." The crew of the Defiance was anything but standard. Kai Chen, the quantum systems architect, moved like a phantom through the ship's technical sections, his left eye, a complex cybernetic replacement, constantly scanned and recalibrated system after system. Each movement was a calculated dance of precision, a reflection of losses that ran deeper than simple technical expertise. Aisha Okoye represented a different kind of expertise. Her family had been xenobiological researchers before the Zorn decimated their research station. Now, her neural implants and tactical understanding made her more machine than human, and infinitely more dangerous. She understood the Zorn not just as an enemy, but as a complex biological system that could be strategically dismantled. Araya's presence permeated every centimeter of the ship, not as a simple AI, but as a living consciousness that existed simultaneously across multiple quantum states. The ship was less a vessel and more a living organism, with the crew serving as its neural network. "Psychological profile analysis complete," Araya announced, its voice a harmonic convergence of multiple human vocal patterns. Zorn Fleet demonstrates 97.3% predictability in initial engagement protocols. Recommendation: exploit communication asymmetries in their quantum resonance matrices. Alina Rodriguez listened, her fingers tracing the intricate quantum entanglement communication device embedded in her forearm. A relic from her mother's research, it was more than a communication tool. It was a direct neural link that allowed her to process information at speeds that would drive a biological mind to madness. The battle site had been carefully selected. The Epsilon Eridani system, relatively sparse, with minimal civilian traffic, and a complex magnetic field that would provide unique tactical opportunities. Standard military doctrine would have seen this as a disadvantage. For the Defiance's crew, it was a playground of potential. "Final systems check," Alina commanded, her voice cutting through the controlled cacophony of pre-battle preparations. Each crew member was more than just a specialist. They were survivors, refugees, people who had lost everything to the Zorn, and were now preparing to make a stand that would echo through galactic history. Kai's quantum mapping revealed something extraordinary. The Zorn fleet wasn't just a military formation. It was a living, breathing ecosystem of technological sophistication. Crystalline vessels that could reconfigure their molecular structure, communication networks that existed across multiple dimensional planes, weapon systems that could alter fundamental physical constants. They're not just technologically advanced, Kai observed, projecting a holographic representation of the incoming Zorn fleet. They're a collective consciousness. Each ship is a cell in a larger organism. Marcus's communication systems began picking up preliminary Zorn transmissions, not just standard military communications, but complex quantum encrypted messages that shifted and morphed faster than most computing systems could track. "They're singing," Marcus said suddenly, a note of wonder in his voice. "Their communication isn't just information. It's art, mathematical poetry." Aisha's implants translated the quantum fluctuations, complex geometric patterns that represented not just tactical information, but cultural memory, mathematical theorems, and genetic histories, all transmitted simultaneously. Elena understood something fundamental in that moment. This wasn't just a battle. This was a conversation, a dialogue conducted through the language of physics, technology, and pure survival instinct. Aroya's final pre-battle assessment was both clinical and poetic. Probability of mission success, 42.7%. Probability of redefining galactic understanding of intelligent conflict, 99.99%. The Defiance hung in space, a singular point of potential, waiting to transform from a theoretical marvel into a practical revolution. Engage, Elena whispered. The universe listened. First contact was nothing like anyone expected. The initial moments of engagement defied every established principle of space warfare. Zorn ships, living crystalline entities that pulsed with quantum-level intelligence, began their attack with a cascading wave of probability disruption. Most species would have been instantly neutralized. The Defiance simply adapted. Area's combat algorithms were less a computer program and more a living ecosystem of tactical possibility. Each incoming threat was not just analyzed, but deconstructed at a fundamental quantum level. Weapon trajectories became mathematical poetry. Energy signatures transformed into complex dialogues of potential outcomes. Incoming quantum resonance cascade. Marcus Rodriguez called out, his voice remarkably calm. Probability matrix suggests total system collapse in 2.3 microseconds. Elena's response was instantaneous. Not a command, but a quantum-level suggestion that rippled through the ship's neural network. The Defiance's hull didn't just absorb the incoming energy. It redirected it, creating a feedback loop that sent the destructive wave back towards its originators. Kai Chen watched the tactical displays with a scientist's detachment and a survivor's intensity. The Zorn's attack patterns were beautiful in their complexity, fractals of destructive potential that would have obliterated any other vessel. But beauty, he knew, was just another form of predictability. They're communicating through destruction, Aisha observed, her cybernetic implants parsing quantum-level information faster than most supercomputers. Each weapon strike is a linguistic construct. They're not just fighting. They're having a conversation. The Defiance's weapon systems were equally unusual. Quantum-locked missiles that could exist in multiple states simultaneously. Energy disruption fields that didn't just block attacks, but fundamentally rewritten the mathematical potential of incoming threats. Each defensive action was a complex mathematical theorem made manifest. One Zorn cruiser, a massive crystalline construct that looked like a living mathematical equation, suddenly found itself fighting against its own probability matrix. Its defensive systems were turned into offensive weapons, its communication networks transformed into cascading failure points. Fascinating, Araya commented, its voice a harmonic convergence of multiple tactical and emotional frequencies. They'd built a technological ecosystem so complex it has become its own vulnerability. Elena understood something fundamental in that moment. This wasn't a battle between ships. This was a conversation between different forms of intelligence. The Zorn saw conflict as a pure mathematical optimization problem. Humanity saw it as a narrative of survival. Marcus's communication systems began broadcasting something extraordinary. Not standard military frequencies, but a complex quantum-encoded message that was part mathematical theorem, part cultural memory, part pure emotional resonance. I'm sending them our entire history, he explained to the bewildered crew. Every moment of human survival, every innovation, every time we've been told something was impossible. The Zorn fleet's response was immediate and catastrophic. Their quantum communication networks began to destabilize, unable to process the complex emotional and historical narrative being broadcast. Kai recognized what was happening. The Defiance wasn't just fighting. It was storytelling at a quantum level. Each defensive action was a narrative construct. Each weapon strike a sentence in a larger communication. They can't comprehend non-linear conflict resolution, Aisha noted, her implants tracking the Zorn fleet's increasing computational confusion. Their entire strategic framework is collapsing. 3 Zorn cruisers simply ceased to exist, not destroyed, but fundamentally deconstructed at a quantum level. Their complex crystalline structures became mathematical uncertainties, potential energy without physical manifestation. Araya's tactical assessment was both clinical and poetic. Conflict is not about overwhelming force, the AI announced. Conflict is about telling a story that rewrites the fundamental understanding of possibility. Alina watched the tactical display, understanding that they were doing something far more profound than winning a battle. They were rewriting the fundamental language of interstellar conflict. "Continue the narrative," she whispered. The universe listened. The silence after the initial engagement was more terrifying than the battle itself. Commander Krillax experienced something unprecedented in the Zorn Collective's millennia-long history: genuine uncertainty. The quantum communication networks that had once been the Zorn's most sophisticated weapon now churned with something close to biological emotion, a state completely foreign to their collective consciousness. Deep within the Zorn flagship's neural matrix, diagnostic systems began to fail in cascading patterns. It wasn't damage. It was something far more insidious. The human broadcasts were rewriting fundamental communication protocols at a level beyond technological interference. "Analyze," Krillax demanded of the ship's central intelligence. The response was fragmented, uncertain, concepts that had never existed in Zorn strategic language. Marcus Rodriguez watched the communication patterns with a linguist's fascination and a warrior's precision. "We're not just jamming their signals," he explained to Alina. "We're introducing cognitive dissonance at a species-wide level." The quantum-encoded transmissions weren't simple military communications. They were complex narrative constructs. Each burst of data a story of human survival, innovation, and resilience. Moments of impossible triumph. Instances where mathematics and probability suggested total failure, but human determination rewrote the equation. Aisha Okoy's cybernetic interfaces began capturing something extraordinary. The Zorn fleet's communication was transforming. No longer a unified collective consciousness, it was becoming something closer to individual panic. Each crystalline ship was beginning to process information independently, a complete breakdown of their most fundamental strategic advantage. "They've never experienced individual thought," Kai Chen observed, his quantum mapping systems tracking the extraordinary transformation. "Their entire civilization is built on collective computational consensus. We're introducing the concept of individual agency." Araya's tactical assessment was both clinical and profound. "Psychological warfare is not about destruction," the AI noted. "It's about fundamentally challenging an entity's understanding of itself." One by one, Zorn ships began to diverge from their original formation, not through tactical decision-making, but through something closer to existential confusion. Their perfectly synchronized movements became erratic, unpredictable, a visual representation of a collective consciousness beginning to fragment. Alina understood the deeper strategy. This wasn't about winning a battle. This was about challenging an entire species' fundamental understanding of conflict, communication, and individual existence. The quantum broadcasts continued. Stories of human survival. Moments of impossible innovation. Mathematical proofs that demonstrated how creativity could overcome seemingly insurmountable odds. Each transmission was a weapon more sophisticated than any physical armament. Krillax watched in growing horror as the Zorn fleet's perfect geometric formations began to dissolve. The crystalline ships, once a testament to collective computational perfection, now looked like a shattered mathematical model. "We are transmitting their own communication protocols back to them," Marcus explained, his fingers dancing across quantum communication interfaces. "But we're introducing small, almost imperceptible variations. It's like speaking their language, but with just enough accent to make them question everything." The psychological impact was total. Zorn ships began to communicate in ways that defied their previous collective consciousness. Some initiated defensive protocols. Others seemed to be attempting individual escape. A few simply stopped functioning, their complex quantum matrices overwhelmed by the introduction of individual uncertainty. Kai's quantum mapping revealed the true depth of their strategy. "We're not just fighting," he said, a note of scientific wonder in his voice. "We're performing the most complex linguistic and psychological experiment in galactic history." Aria's communication systems began broadcasting something even more extraordinary, a complex quantum signal that was part mathematical proof, part emotional narrative, part pure potential. It wasn't just a message. It was an invitation to reimagine existence. "Conflict is a failure of communication," the AI announced across all frequencies. "We are offering an alternative." The Zorn fleet's response was nothing short of a species-wide existential crisis. Perfectly synchronized systems began to fragment. Collective consciousness began to individuate. An entire civilization's understanding of itself was being fundamentally rewritten. Elena watched the tactical display, understanding they had done something far more profound than win a battle. They were challenging the very concept of collective consciousness. "Continue the conversation," she whispered. The universe listened and began to change. The moment of absolute crisis arrived with the precision of a surgical strike. Krulax's flagship, the Zorn Collective's most advanced technological marvel, initiated its final, most devastating protocol. A weapon that wasn't just a device of destruction, but a quantum-level reality manipulator designed to collapse entire star systems into fundamental entropy. Planetary annihilation sequence engaged, the ship's central intelligence announced, its voice a complex harmonic of mathematical certainties. But certainty was about to become humanity's most potent weapon. Elena Rodriguez understood something fundamental in that moment. This wasn't about survival. This was about demonstrating the fundamental unpredictability of human potential. Her hand, augmented with quantum response neural interfaces, moved with a precision that defied traditional understanding of reaction time. "Aria," she called, her voice a calm counterpoint to the impending cosmic catastrophe. "Run probability scenario Omega-9. The ship's AI response was instantaneous, not just a computational analysis, but a holistic strategic projection that integrated every possible variable, including those that defied traditional understanding of physics. Marcus Rodriguez's communication systems began to do something extraordinary. Instead of traditional defensive countermeasures, he started broadcasting a complex quantum signal that was part mathematical theorem, part historical narrative, part pure emotional resonance. The signal was a weapon unlike anything the Zorn had ever encountered. Kai Chen watched the tactical displays with a scientist's detachment and a warrior's intensity. The incoming weapon wasn't just a physical threat. It was a complex quantum construct designed to unravel the fundamental fabric of spatial existence. "It's not a weapon," Kai muttered, his cybernetic eye processing information at speeds that would drive a biological mind to madness. "It's a computational proof of universal destruction." Aisha Okoi's neural implants began to interface directly with the incoming quantum threat. Where most species would have attempted to block or deflect, she began to do something unprecedented. She started to communicate with the weapon itself. The planet killer device hesitated. Not physically, not in any way that could be measured by traditional sensors. But in the quantum realm of pure potential, something extraordinary happened. The weapon began to reconsider. Aria's tactical assessment was both clinical and poetic. "Destruction is a failure of communication," the AI announced across multiple quantum frequencies. "We are offering an alternative narrative." The Zorn flagship's weapon began to deconstruct itself, not through external interference, but through a fundamental recalibration of its own existential purpose. Each quantum-locked particle began to reassess its fundamental programming. Elena understood the deeper strategy. This wasn't about preventing destruction. This was about challenging an entire species' understanding of purpose and potential. "Redirect quantum harmonics," she commanded, her voice a precise mathematical suggestion that rippled through the ship's neural network. The planet-killer weapon began to transform. Its destructive potential didn't disappear. Instead, it began to redistribute. converting pure destructive energy into a complex information network that spread across the entire Zorn fleet. Krelax experienced something unprecedented. Fear. Not the biological fear of individual survival, but a species-wide existential uncertainty that challenged everything the Zorn Collective understood about conflict, communication, and existence. Marcus's communication systems captured the extraordinary moment. The weapon wasn't just being neutralized. It was being transformed into a complex narrative of potential, a quantum-level conversation that redefined the very concept of conflict. "We're not destroying," Marcus explained to the stunned crew. "We're translating." The Zorn flagship's systems began to fragment, not through external attack, but through an internal recalibration that challenged its fundamental understanding of purpose. Perfectly synchronized systems began to individuate. A collective consciousness began to experience something close to individual agency. Kai's quantum mapping revealed the true depth of their strategy. "We're performing the most complex linguistic and psychological transformation in galactic history," he said, a note of scientific wonder in his voice. Alina watched the tactical display, understanding they had done something far more profound than prevent a weapon of mass destruction. They had introduced the concept of choice to a species that had never understood individual agency. "Continue the conversation," she whispered. The universe listened and began to rewrite its own rules. The United Earth Council chamber fell silent as Alina Rodriguez delivered her report. It wasn't a military debriefing. It was something far more profound. A comprehensive deconstruction of an entire galactic paradigm. Holographic displays flickered with quantum data streams, showing the cascading effects of the Defiance's engagement with the Zorn Collective. Dr. Amara O'Keefe, Earth's chief xenopolitical strategist, studied the data with a mathematician's precision. "This isn't just a victory," she observed. "This is a fundamental reimagining of interstellar relations." The diplomatic consequences were unprecedented. 17 previously subjugated civilizations had already initiated contact, not as potential allies, but as students seeking to understand the revolutionary approach humanity had demonstrated. The Zorn Collective, once an immovable force of galactic conquest, was now undergoing a complete societal reconstruction. "We didn't defeat them," Alina explained, her voice calm and measured. "We communicated with them in a way they had never experienced." Marcus Rodriguez's communication analysis revealed the true depth of their intervention. The quantum broadcasts had done more than disable a military threat. They had introduced the concept of individual agency to a species that had existed as a pure collective consciousness for millennia. Kai Chen presented the scientific implications. Holographic displays showed the fundamental transformation of Zorn communication networks, once a perfect, synchronized system, now a complex ecosystem of individual potential. "They're learning to think differently," he said, a note of scientific wonder in his voice. The economic and political ramifications were equally staggering. Entire trade routes that had been controlled by the Zorn for centuries were now open. Resource-rich systems that had been under permanent lockdown were suddenly negotiating with multiple species. Aisha Okoy's report focused on the psychological transformation. "We didn't just change a civilization," she explained. "We introduced them to the concept of choice." AI, the ship's AI, continued to process and broadcast complex quantum communications. No longer just a ship's computer, it had become something closer to a diplomatic translator, bridging gaps between species that had previously been considered unbridgeable. The United Earth Council members watched in a mixture of awe and trepidation. This was not the military victory they had expected. This was a complete reimagining of interstellar conflict and communication. "We've created a new model of engagement," Alina explained. "Conflict resolution is no longer about destruction. It's about communication, understanding, and potential." Diplomatic channels from across the galaxy began lighting up. The Zorn's former subject species, who had lived under generations of oppression, were seeking to understand the approach that had fundamentally altered their oppressors. Dr. O'Keefe's analysis revealed something extraordinary. The quantum communication broadcasts had introduced a concept that was revolutionary across multiple species, the idea that intelligence is not about uniformity, but about diverse potential. "We didn't just change the Zorn," Marcus observed. "We provided a template for interstellar communication that challenges everything we've understood about conflict." The economic implications were massive. Trade routes that had been locked under Zorn control for millennia were suddenly open. Species that had been isolated were now seeking dialogue, collaboration, diplomatic exchange. Kai's scientific teams were already studying the quantum communication techniques. What had been a targeted military strategy was now becoming a new field of xenolinguistic and quantum communication research. "This is more than first contact," Dr. O'Keefe explained to the stunned council members. "This is first understanding." AI continued to process and broadcast complex quantum communications. The AI had become something more than a ship's computer, a living bridge between different forms of intelligence, different ways of understanding existence. The Lina understood the deeper implication. They had done something far more profound than win a battle. They had introduced a new way of thinking about conflict, communication, and potential. The final report was surprisingly simple. Not a military victory log, but a philosophical statement that would be studied for generations. Conflict is a failure of communication. Understanding is the ultimate victory. As the council meeting concluded, the Lina looked out over the holographic displays of a rapidly changing galaxy. The Defiance had done more than change a battle. It had changed the fundamental understanding of what was possible. The universe was listening and learning.